Welcome back to part 4 of episode 97 of Smack Talk here at smarkoutmemo.com. It's time for the monthly mailbag, as we do every month before the pay-per-view predictions. And we have 2 people that sent in 3 questions apiece. Question 1 from Watchman King 67. From these 6 wrestlers, Rhyno, Goldust, Shane Douglas, Raven, Vampiro, and X-Pac, who would you make your main champion, secondary champion, the 2 tag team champions, have no belt, and who gets fired? And when I was going through my list for this, it's all basically like the ECW kind of guys for the most part. I mean, it's not everybody, but out of the ECW guys, I was never a huge fan of pretty much any of them. So this was really tough for me to figure out because I couldn't figure out who I would want as like the main champion or whatever. I'd fire Vampiro. I would give no belt to Shane Douglas. Tag team championships would go to Rhyno and X-Pac because I've always been a fan of that idea of the smaller, faster guy and the bigger, stronger guy. Secondary champion Goldust, and main champion Raven. And the main reason I went with Raven for the main champion is when he had the flock going on, that was actually kind of cool. And having somebody as like the world champion and they've got a stable going on, that's always something interesting that I like. So around the horn here, Braden, who would you go with? Main, secondary, tag team, no belt, and fired out of those people?
Oh, boy. We got to go on the fly here. Oh, my goodness. All right. I would definitely give, like, the main championship to Raven. Like, even the stuff he did in WCW after he left from ECW was really good. He did very good in the role of being, like, the brainwashing cult-esque leader. I think he could have probably, if he was used better elsewhere than ECW, I think he could have went even bigger as a star, maybe to the standards he got as ECW. So I'd go with him as my main champion. Goldust would certainly have to be my secondary champion. By that, they mean like what, like Intercontinental United States title
basically.
level? Yeah, like non-world champion. And I'd give that to Goldust. I mean, he's held the Intercontinental title before. And tag champ-wise, yeah, I got to go with similar to you, X-Pac and Rhyno, really. It's like imagine like a Vampiro and X-Pac tag team. That'd be a little weird, wouldn't it? I mean, out of the options given, it kind of seems like the only one that really makes sense. And then Shane Douglas, I'd fire him. I mean, it actually happened in real life. So, you can go and keep Vampiro on some sort of role where he could be like this supernatural gimmick person, feud with Undertaker or whatever. And that's what I would do with them. Strange list to go through for sure.
Interesting.
Okay, my main champion would be Goldust because I think he'd be rather interesting in terms of his gimmick. My mid-card champion would be Rhyno. My tag team champions would be Raven and Vampiro because they've got the same sort of gimmick. And I would fire Shane Douglas because he sucks.
And no belt to X-Pac?
No belt to X-Pac. Because X-Pac, I think he's got a good mind on him, but in terms of being a champion, I just don't see it.
Drew?
I'm going to go with Goldust as the main champion because I know him the most out of all of these. Okay, what's next? I'm only 17, so you got to lower expectations, people. Okay, secondary champion. I'm going to go with Rhyno. Okay. My tag team champions, I'm going to go with X-Pac and Shane Douglas. And I'm going to fire Raven, you ungrateful son of a bitch. Fuck you. That's it.
Miguel?
Before I do my list, I have to ask, is there heat between Vampiro and X-Pac? Because I'm not too familiar with their work together.
There might be heat between Vampiro and Xbox. Like Drew was saying.
I didn't say that.
No, Drew was.
Oh, okay.
Wrestle Society X, the two of them worked together. Vampiro was the main booker. X-Pac was actually talent. There's no heat between the two guys.
Did I say Xbox?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, damn it.
All right, I'm going to go in order of how they're listed. I would fire Rhino only because he's never really done anything for me. I've just never. I maybe for ECW he was impressive, but I just was never impressed by his work
Agreed.
in the WWE or TNA in terms of Rhino. So he would be gone. I would make Goldust my secondary champ just because that's a good spot for him. I mean, he really was a great Intercontinental Champion. Shane Douglas, I would give him the main title. I'm one of the few people who doesn't mind Shane Douglas. I've seen his earlier work, especially in his promos. He's a solid wrestler and he's got an intensity to him. I mean, if we're talking old school Shane Douglas, like early to mid '90s Shane Douglas in his prime, then yeah, I think he would be a solid enough champion. I would not give a belt to Raven, but that's because I think he would be a great foil against Shane Douglas. I think a Raven Shane Douglas feud could work if Raven were playing the face. I think Raven playing the squalor degenerate against Shane Douglas, being thinking high of himself, thinking he's the classier guy because he's an actual wrestler. I think a dynamic like that could work. And I would make Vampiro and X-Pac my tag team champions just because I think they could put on some really solid matches.
Peyton?
Well, first off, I would fire Shane Douglas. He is one of my least favorite wrestlers of all time. He is just boring. He was one of those guys who went by a normal name in a time period where you still had interesting names. It's not like today where everybody is first name, last name. And he just had no personality. He wasn't a spectacular wrestler to me, and most importantly, he was a relative nobody. I mean, he never really accomplished anything of major note. I mean, he was the first ECW champion after they left their territory. Okay, good for you. You threw a belt in a garbage can. Well, who watched it? Nobody. So, bye-bye Shane Douglas. No belts, I would give it to Vampiro kind of by default because I found a slot for everyone else here. I don't hate Vampiro. I'm not a huge fan of him. I think he's someone worth having on a roster, though, so he can hang out there. My tag team, I would do Goldust and Raven together. The reason I would do this is because these both are like really out there, weird outcasts, but in very, very different ways. And I think it can be played to some fun comedic effect over them trying to out crazy each other and looking at the other one like they're the crazier one. Like this whole time, they're like, no, I'm the sane one of the group. Go back and forth. That could be fun. Secondary, I would give it to Rhyno. Another guy I've never been very big on, but for some reason the fans have really liked. So I think he could be someone to be an asset in my mid-card title role. And for my main title, I would actually give it to X-Pac. And I would take the chance on it. I think X-Pac has the capability of being really, really over, as we've seen during certain parts of his career. I mean, there was that point where he was with Kane, where he was a massive, massive star. And if they were into bringing a guy like that into the main event at that point of his career, I think he could have hanged. I think he could have went in there and he could have had matches with Triple H. He could have had matches with Mick Foley. He could have had matches with those crew of people and really did pretty well with it. So that's where I would go with that.
I'm glad that you went with X-Pac because I really almost gave him the main championship spot and switched him around with Raven. But at the last minute, I was just kind of like, you know what? No, I'm going to go with the Raven thing instead. So very glad that somebody ended up going with the old Xbox instead of PS3.
I can see why, though. I can see why, though, because Raven has a mind for the business. But in a sense as well, he's proven time and time again, even though he's been given the ball, he kind of drops it in terms of the way he's perceived. And because he's had years of drug abuse, it doesn't really help him get over as the top guy. But X-Pac, probably.
Now, Watchman King, you're going to like this. This question that you asked inspired me to introduce a new segment, and I don't know when I'm going to actually do the first one or not, but Call the Spot is going to be a new segment here on Smack Talk and Smark Out Moment, and it's going to be a little bit twist on what you had suggested. We're going to do 5 people, and we're going to have to pick in typical marry, fuck, kill type of environment. A main eventer, an upper mid-carder, a mid-carder, a jobber, and then somebody to be released. So you're going to actually see this happen again. Question 2. If you could book a Money in the Bank match with 2 WCW stars, 2 WWE stars, 2 ECW stars, and 2 TNA stars, who would you choose? And I went with, for WCW, Chris Jericho and Booker T.
You took one of mine.
Oh, you can still do it too.
Okay.
WWE, Shelton Benjamin and Kofi Kingston. ECW, Rob Van Dam and Eddie Guerrero. And for TNA, AJ Styles and Austin Aries. And the main reason I went with these people instead of just a bunch of huge names, Austin from WWE, or, if you're going for people that are just current, then the CM Punks and all that. The main reason I went with these kind of guys is I looked at what they were doing in that time period that the company last popped up. Obviously, WCW can't go with any recent guys because they're not there anymore. The company's defunct, and same with ECW. But Jericho in WCW was somebody who was interesting, and he was kind of pushing the boundaries a little bit. And Booker T was a real standout, reliable guy. And he's proven himself in ladder matches too. Shelton Benjamin and Kofi Kingston, they're just there for spots, basically. The same for Rob Van Dam. Eddie Guerrero, he's great in ladder matches. AJ Styles and Austin Aries are two guys that can wrestle that X Division style and can do some kind of crazy stuff, but at the same time, they're pretty sound too. So it would be a group of 8 people that could do ladder match moves and have a bunch of spots that are cool, but at the same time, they're not just spot monkeys outside of Rob Van Dam. Braden, who would you go with?
From WCW, one of them I would choose would probably be Rey Mysterio in his prime, from his early cruiserweight days. There, where he was one of the top people when he feuded with Eddie back then, and did for arguably some of his best work. I think he'd probably work, maybe not as the guy to win it, but as kind of like the standout Shelton Benjamin style performer, just kind of draws people's jaws, the moves that he does. Another person from WCW at that time that would probably fit. You got a lot of people from their mid card, but Jericho's probably a good bet. As somebody you could kind of put in there that's a decent mid card name, I would say. WWE. Now this could mean basically from any era, really. It didn't really have to be from right now.
Yeah.
Correct. Okay. Kofi's always a pretty good person to fill a spot. I would say, somebody like a Dolph Ziggler as well. Would probably, the athletic guy can work, but he can also take a few high spots. ECW, you might as well throw RVD and Jerry Lynn in there. They had their series of matches. They'd be pretty good spot fillers for just moments and such from the match. And then in TNA, I think it's pretty easy. You take another old school rivalry from there. You throw in AJ and Daniels. And that'd be a pretty good 8-person bout. Make for Money in the Bank.
Brahan, what are you going with?
Let's just go with by the lesser company. TNA. I would go with AJ Styles and Christopher Daniels, because 2 of my personal favourites and very, very good workers inside the ring. WCW, I would probably go with Booker T and I'm going to go with a controversial one. Canyon. Basically because, again, 2 solid workers, 2 guys I feel would excel on this type of match. ECW, Rob Van Dam, Jerry Lynn, mirror what Braden says on that one. 2 very good high flyers and great workers in the ring. And WWE, I would look at Kofi Kingston and Shelton Benjamin for all the reasons that you said. Great guys, could do amazing spots in that ring, and probably 2 guys that you would see solid upper mid-carder, sort of world champion status at some points. So I would go with those. That's my selection, guys, and move on to the next person.
Drew?
All right, I'm gonna start with TNA. I'm gonna be the first one to start with TNA. So I'm gonna go with
Drew. You're not the first one to start with TNA. Burhan started with TNA.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, I'm really tired.
Well, let's just get him the first one to start with the TNA medal, all right? Jeez.
We don't give out participation awards, Hayden.
I've got enough segments on Smack Talk. I don't need to have the first one to start with TNA award.
Drew's never going to get an I Got Gameplay t-shirt at this rate.
Okay, so my 2 TNA stars would be the Orlando Jordan TNA and the Spirit of Eddie Guerrero.
The Spirit of Botch. What?
Okay, my 2 ECW stars. I'm gonna go with Balls Mahoney and Sandman, because why the fuck not? WWE, I'm gonna go with. Oh damn, I didn't think about WWE. I'm gonna go with Psychosis and Super Crazy, because why the fuck not? And my 2 WCW stars, I'm gonna go with Buff Bagwell and Ron Simmons.
What?
I really want to see this Money in the Bank.
Yeah, right? What?
Well, you guys are like trying to make this like, oh
Money
man,
in the
high
bounce
five,
house.
oh good workers.
Off
You
in
need
the
to slow it
bank.
down. There's got to be some slow points in the Money in the Bank match. I mean, come on. Why
Yeah,
otherwise?
this
Why
is
would
a
the fuck
complete
would
slow
Sheamus be?
point.
What do you mean? We got Ron Simmons and we got the Spirit of Chavo Guerrero, because that's what we
I
call
call
him now.
it booking this Money in the Bank would probably be in December to Dismember.
Yeah, this is a Money in the Bank if it was booked by WCW circa 2001.
This would be the main event, obviously. Bound for glory, obviously.
Yeah, no, including the reverse battle royal beforehand.
Yeah.
Who would you go with, Miguel?
All right, I'm actually surprised you all skipped over a very big talent in TNA. I'm gonna start with TNA because I want to be the first one to do that. For TNA, I'm going to go with Austin Aries and Jeff Hardy.
Yeah,
I'm surprised a
Shrug.
lot of people forgot about that. Yeah, Austin Aries and Jeff Hardy because everybody else said AJ
I
Styles.
try not to think about that. Oh wait, no, I didn't say AJ Styles. What the fuck are you talking about?
Well, everybody else did. All right.
Oh, mine doesn't count. Okay, you continue, Miguel.
Well, Jesus Christ, what'd you say? You said what was it? Hugh
Orlando
Morris
Jordan.
and Orlando Jordan and the
Fight,
Spirit of Eddie
fight,
Guerrero,
fight. Okay.
Okay, go. Just go.
All right. For TNA, I'm gonna go with Austin Aries and Jeff Hardy. For ECW, I'm gonna go with, since everybody else said Jerry Lynn and RVD, I'm gonna go with Rey Mysterio and Sabu, just because in the case of Sabu, you need that spot monkey. For WCW, I'll probably go with Eddie Guerrero, and who else can I put in there?
Too Cold Scorpio.
No, was he in WCW?
He was for a little bit, wasn't he? I don't know. Whatever. Continue.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Eddie Guerrero and screw it. I'll go with Chris Jericho. Everybody else keeps saying it. I can't really think of anything else. It's either that or Billy Kidman.
Mortis.
He just no. And so I got ECW, I got WCW, I got TNA. Oh, WWE. Shawn Michaels and John Morrison.
Really good. I didn't even think about that. Peyton, round us out.
For TNA, I would do Austin Aries and Sanjay Dutt, which I'm surprised I didn't hear a name anyone else say. That guy really can fly, does some really cool moves off the top ropes. I think he'd be great there. I also want to give an honorable mention to Chris Sabin before his injury. He used to do some really cool high-flying stuff that I dug a lot too. My WCW guys, I would do Rey Mysterio in his prime. Assuming all these guys were catching them while they're in their prime. This is, all fantasy, so we can do some time travel. And the other guy I would take from WCW is another name I'm surprised you haven't heard, Juventud Guerrera. That guy was badass, and we were talking earlier about Taka Michinoku and the great Sasuke launching the light heavyweight division in WWE. Well, on the other side of the things, you had guys like Rey Mysterio, Juventud Guerrero, and Psychosis really getting the luchas over in WCW, and Juvi was a big part of that. I would love to see him part of a big multi-man ladder match like this. For WWE, two kings of the ladder match for them, Shawn Michaels and Edge. Get those two guys in their prime, throw them in there, gold. And ECW, I'm going to go with Bob Core Holly.
And Shane Douglas.
And the Zombie.
And Zombie's going for the briefcase. Slowly.
All right, last question from Watchman King. If you were a wrestler, who would your dream match opponent be? And I would be more than horrible at wrestling, so I would need somebody that could carry me even in a squash match. But, that being said, HBK or Undertaker. Braden?
Oh boy. I would have to say HBK. I mean, that guy can pretty well, or Brian. Anybody who's got basically the ability to carry, a plastic bag to a decent match would be somebody I'd want to be in the ring with for sure. But probably Shawn Michaels. I mean, he is perhaps my favorite wrestler of all time. So why wouldn't you want to wrestle a childhood hero anyway?
Perhaps.
HBK for me.
Wake up, Burhan.
Yep, Brian.
Sorry. Me, I would probably end up going. I would say Shawn Michaels, but then I'd probably go with CM Punk. And I have some wrestling ability. I'm probably not on the same level as Punk, so I'd expect him to probably carry me through most of that match. But the reason being, I think we could probably have a 5-star match together. Hell, Eddie Guerrero pulled one out of my ass.
Drew?
If I was gonna go with someone that could actually make it believable that I could beat him, then I'd go with Michael Cole. Or if I was gonna go with someone that if I get in the ring with them, they would get injured and I could win that way, I'd go with Sin Cara. But if I was gonna have an actual dream match with someone, it'd probably be Eddie Guerrero. Not the spirit of Eddie Guerrero, the man himself.
Miguel?
I would. See, I had a joke plan. I was gonna say, obviously, I'd want to have a dream matchup with Trish Stratus or something. But no, in all seriousness, I'd probably say The Rock. I'm just such a big fan of him. I mean, I grew up in the 2000s with wrestling, so he was like the guy. So in terms of my dream matchup, it would probably have to be The Rock.
Peyton?
Well, if I was going to be going into a match, I would want to go into a match where I'm going to look like I'm absolutely kicking the guy's ass. And I can't think of anyone who's better at getting their ass kicked than Colin Delaney.
I thought you were gonna say Bret Hart. Bret Hart can sell a beating.
Not as well as Colin Delaney can.
Yeah.
That
guy's a ragdoll.
I got another idea.
Well, imagine painted, you have like bandages all over everything.
I got another idea that just popped in my mind, and I think I'm gonna change my HBK Undertaker answer. I'm gonna go against somebody who has a horrible record. They've only lost, and it would be a great feather in my cap to beat them. I'm gonna face God.
Oh!
Fuck you.
Oh God.
Exactly. So there goes Watchmen Kings. Questions. Thank you for sending those in. And now we're going to move on to Awesome Piano Mans. Number 1. What is your favorite wrestling VHS, DVD, Blu-ray, etc. of all time? I don't really have any because I don't typically watch these. I don't usually get a chance to check out a lot of the DVDs. But I do vaguely remember watching and liking the Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels DVD where they kind of did the whole retrospective of the Montreal Screwjob. I always like shoot things, but I'm actually more so a fan of the Legends Roundtable out of any of that kind of stuff. And I'd rather watch a couple hours of that than something that's just kind of like the best of Raw for that year or something like that. Braden, do you have any?
Yeah, WrestleMania 24 on DVD is a pretty good cherished item in my collection. It's probably my favorite DVD I have. I love watching that event over and over again. That distant second would probably be Money in the Bank, and then after that, that's not an event DVD. My favorite would probably be the recent Best in the World documentary that came out last fall, CM Punk's own personal DVD. And of those three, they're probably the three that I watch most that are in my collection.
Burhan?
For me, I would have to say Beyond the Mat, because I remember when I first watched that DVD, I was looking at how it went from being a casual documentary on the life of a certain wrestler to exposing so much in terms of what the wrestling industry was at that time. So I would say that, because I love watching documentaries, I love watching shoot interviews, I love hearing from the wrestler's perspective what's going on. The thing about the WWE DVDs that they put out on certain wrestlers, they tend to hide a lot. You know, they'll protect a certain wrestler. It's the same with those WWE books for some reason. They end up hiding a lot of who that person is and just focus on the character in general. So I would go with that.
Drew?
Well, I guess I'm kind of like in the same boat as you, Mango. I don't really collect DVDs, but most of the DVDs I've seen is from the kid who lives behind me. He has like hundreds of these DVDs, and there's two in particular that I've seen. Like the first one is Blood Sports, which is ECW's most violent matches. That's a good one, and I forget what it's called, but the documentary of Billy Graham was actually pretty interesting to watch. So it had to be between those two.
Miguel?
In terms of VHSs, I've got 3, and it's gonna be a 3-way tie because I remember growing up watching all 3 of these a lot. In terms of VHSs, one of them is the greatest matches of 1999 on VHS. It had like the Royal Rumble '99 matchup, the Austin McMahon cage match from the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, and I think 2 others. It's been a while since I've seen it, but I really watched the heck out of that back in the day. WWF Hardcore was another one that I had. And their Tables, Ladders, and Chairs VHS, the first one. And I know they've released a few more since then, but those I watched so much back when they first came out. In terms of DVDs, I'd probably have to say it's a tie between the Monday Night War DVD, which really was fascinating, and the Self-Destruction of the Ultimate Warrior. It's just, I really dug, even though it was a complete another character assassination against the Ultimate Warrior, I still found it really fascinating, some of the backstage stuff that they talked about.
Peyton?
I am a huge fan of WWE's documentaries. I love their style. I love the production value they put into it. The way they structure them is just so great. I mean, when I watch other documentaries or when I'm making something that's a documentary style thing myself, I take a lot of influence out of what I'm watching there from what I see from them, I should say. So with that being said, Monday Night Wars, as Miguel said, one of my favorites, something I can watch tons and tons of times. Absolutely love it. Rise and Fall of ECW, another fantastic one. I'm not a big person on ECW. I don't like a lot of the wrestlers. I didn't watch it back in the day, but the story that documentary tells is absolutely fantastic one to watch. Rise and Fall of WCW is pretty good too. I can watch that one because I am more familiar with what went down with WCW, but not as well made as the ECW one. Ric Flair and the Four Horsemen, fantastic documentary. Great chance to see a lot of that old school NWA and territory footage that you may not get to see in a lot of other places. The Best of Monday Night Raw, that was made for their, was it the 15th anniversary or was it the 20th anniversary? I can't remember. It was a 3 DVD set, fantastic set. Hell in a Cell DVD set, Ladder Match DVD set. I mean, they've made a lot of great DVDs. Almost any of the Superstars retrospectives are great. Bret Hart's had a couple good ones. Ric Flair's had a couple good ones. Shawn Michaels' My Journey DVD is great. The 3DX DVDs. I mean, Jesus Christ, I can go on. They're all great.
Question 2. Is there a current wrestler that you would want them to make a similar shoot DVD like CM Punk's, which was mentioned earlier? One person that kind of, and I don't know why this person stood out as the first thing that popped into my head, was Kevin Nash. I kind of would like to see that, but going along with our hot tag for this week, I'd really like to see a shoot DVD of Jim Ross.
You took my idea.
I'd really love to see that.
I think Kevin Nash has done something like that with kayfabe commentaries. I believe he did something with them about a year or two ago.
I want to see what the Kevin Nash perspective of the curtain call and going over to the Outsiders and all that would be. And I don't know why that popped up as like my gut reaction to the answering the question, but I don't know, for some reason it did, and that's why I figured I'd throw it out there. Braden, who would you like to see have a shoot DVD?
Well, if he didn't get forced out or fully retire. I would say a complete retrospective on his entire career, talking about even his days before WWE or WCW. A collection on just JR's history would probably be extremely fascinating to watch. Have they ever done that? I'm not entirely sure if they have.
Not that I'm aware of.
Like, just from his humble beginnings all the way to going to the WWE, I think would just be definitely very fascinating to watch. I don't know if we'll ever get that now.
Jim Ross, the slobber knocker story.
Yeah, something like that would be very great to see. I say him.
Brahan?
For me, I don't know. That's a hard question because I don't think the WWE can pull off a shoot-style DVD. Punk was as close as you were going to get, but I think there was certain things that he probably wasn't allowed to say as well. His DVD set mostly focused on his life as a kid and also the pipe bomb incident, but it didn't focus enough on who and how Punk was built up in terms of his style of wrestling and where he came from, so to speak. And it kind of painted him a little bit as egotistical. Like, you had like his detractors like Michael Hayes sitting there going, well, there's a certain way to do business and he didn't want to do it that way and all, so I still would actually class that as more of a storyline based interview DVD. If you're looking at shoot stuff, I think you'd have to go outside of WWE because I don't think the company in general would choose that format because people will end up saying stuff that the WWE would disapprove of.
Drew?
But, yeah.
Jinder Mahal.
About his upcoming face turn?
Yeah, pretty much.
Don't hinder Jinder, the documentary.
Miguel?
Like I said, I gotta agree with Burhan. I don't think WWE would allow somebody to really be able to speak their mind in terms of, realness. But if this guy could be 100% open, if he could honestly talk about what it's like to have gone through what he did, I'd love to see a Chris Jericho shoot DVD. I've read, like I said, I've read bits and pieces of his biography. I'd love to see him I could listen to him talk about that kind of stuff for hours. And if he was like 100% uncensored and didn't have to like toe any company lines, I think it'd be really interesting to see what that guy could say.
Peyton?
Well, there's different kinds of shoot interviews. When it's just a basic interview, just off the cuff, I can enjoy with almost anybody. And I'm really getting into a lot of those actually listening to the Stone Cold Steve Austin podcast, even Cole Cabana to an extent as well. It has them on there. Some of the recent guys that Stone Cold's on there, like Ric Flair, Jim Ross has been on there, Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart, anyone goes on there. Diamond Dallas Page was recently on there, and they all talk so candid and open and freely. Like, they're just sitting there chilling back, popping beers and talking. The other kind of shoot interviews you get are the ones where they're just digging for dirt sheet scoops and things like that to say to them. I don't generally like those. I think those are disgusting. I don't think they're entertaining. I think they're all just trying to create negative energy, and I generally try to stay away from those. But if I could watch like a tell-all interview where someone just opened up about everything and just told all the stories unfiltered, holding nothing back, Vince McMahon would be.
I knew you were going to go with McMahon.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually the main reason that I didn't go with McMahon. I'm like, Peyton's going to pick him.
How could I not? I mean, how could you not want to hear everything that guy would have to say? Like, maybe like when he knows he's on his deathbed or something like that, just maybe he'll do something like that. But at this point, there's so much we don't know.
The list of everyone I screwed over by Vince McMahon.
I gotta ask, because I found this DVD on YouTube. I haven't seen it yet. How much of the McMahon DVD is kayfabe, and how much of it is actually, would you consider to be real, given the information that is out there about Vince McMahon?
I actually would say a lot of that DVD is pretty accurate. Hell, that's another good DVD I should add to that list. That's a really fun watch.
Huh.
I might have to check that out.
I think, in a sense, though,
they even acknowledge the other McMahon kid. You never see that kid mentioned.
There's another kid?
Yeah, there's another daughter.
Do they acknowledge?
Oh yeah, shit, the other daughter. I forgot about that. Yeah.
Do they
she doesn't want
acknowledge
to be involved in anything.
Do they acknowledge his pre-McMahon years before he got his name changed?
I don't think they did. No.
Huh.
Yeah,
weird.
that I've heard the stories of that. That's pretty rough.
Yeah, there's another person I would say if you could have a tell-all DVD from him, Jim Ross.
Yeah, we already went over him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mango was the one that said it. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but I would love to hear him just go out on and literally open up a can of whoop ass on the WWE and literally spill about how he felt about everything, including the infamous WCW, Oklahoman storyline.
I'm still waiting for racist JR.
We have one more question, and I'm going to try to keep this one a little bit quick because I know we can go really a long time over this, but we did kind of talk about it before. Going back with last week's Smack Talk, do you agree with Triple H's statement that title does not make the man makes the title? I actually say the company makes both the man and the title because it's up to them to book the man to be worthy of the title and the title to mean something when it's on anybody. Because you can give somebody like CM Punk, who's a main eventer, the IC title, and it could do wonders for it, but only if you allow him to defend the title like he cares about it. If you give the title to somebody and they do nothing with it, it doesn't do anything service. And if you give the World Heavyweight Championship to somebody like Del Rio and he is still not entertaining, then it doesn't mean shit. So I think neither man nor title makes the other one. I think it's the company that does it all. And it's all up to the booker. Braden?
I still think the man kind of has to make it, essentially, because even if you have somebody who may not be defending the title regularly, at least when they're holding it, they can still be entertaining with just how they are with their presence or their charisma or whatever. Like Cody Rhodes, he was booked fairly well, but let's say even if he didn't defend it as often as he did, which even then his title defense very few and far in between. There's a difference between him and say somebody like Curtis Axel now, for instance, where you can just tell the difference in basically presence or how they handle themselves as a character. I still think in a way you got to kind of have the talent to make your championship somewhat worth it, even if the booking isn't entirely there. I think it totally depends on the talent of the individual holding it to make a reign succeed. Booking does have a lot to do with it as well. Like we've seen how many champions flounder over the years because they've been given nothing to do. But the ones who lack in areas really show without any booking.
Burhan?
If you look at this from different perspectives, yes, booking is a big factor in regards to champions, like who they're competing against, who they're having certain matches with. And also you have to give it to the person to see if they can actually hold up their end of the bargain by putting the match together. If John Cena, for instance, when he first had the WWE champion, when he won it against JBL, it was shit. The match was terrible, and Cena wasn't looked at as a credible champion until he went over to Raw and started going against more wrestling orientated guys like Jericho, guys like Christian, guys who could work matches with him, and he excelled. The more guys came in, the more guys went with Cena, the more Cena basically matured as a champion, and over time it worked. And the thing about booking these days, it's kind of shoot from the hip. There's no long-term plans. It's starting to change now with Punk's reign, with Cena's reign before he lost it to Bryan, and also with the current storyline. But in order for those titles to mean anything, they all need to be encased in their own certain storylines. People need to be feuding over it. Feuds need to develop, and characters need to develop in terms of those feuds. So hopefully, with the current storyline we've got going on at the moment, everything's going to change. So if the man makes the title makes the man. It's everything in a sense: booking, person, and matches. There you go.
Drew?
I guess I'm gonna agree with the Mango here because I'm gonna just change my answer up a little bit here. To me it just depends on what the title is and who has the title. For example, if we have a Hornswoggle with a cruiserweight title, no one's gonna give a shit about that title. But if we have a credible champion, then yeah, it makes sense. The man makes the title. It just, like I said, it just really depends. To me, it just depends on who has the title and whether or not it is being booked correctly. So it's just I don't know. So yeah.
Miguel?
I gotta agree with you, Tony. I think really the booking makes both. I mean, if you try to throw a belt on a big name star, but you book it so that he doesn't care if he has the belt, it's not gonna mean anything. But at the same time, if you put the belt on somebody and then cut his nuts out from under him, it's not going to matter anything either. If you really want one to help the other, you got to be behind it. You really got to push either way. I mean, look at when the example I use is look at when DX got the tag team belts back in, I think, was it '09 if I'm not mistaken. That was a lot of people thought that was going to really bring up the belt in terms of popularity, and it did nothing. I mean, they basically flat out said these belts mean nothing, and that's what ended up happening. Conversely, if you give the belt, conversely, if you give something like the TNA World Title to like a Chris Sabin, which they did, it looked ridiculous. I mean, it did not fit at all. That was a situation where the person could not make the belt. I agree with you. I really couldn't think of any other way to say it.
Peyton?
Just going to echo pretty much what everyone's saying. It's a system of checks and balances. I mean, a person has to build themselves to the level of being deserved of the title, and that title has to maintain a certain level that it's worth chasing after. And I'm not going to waste my time. It's the same thing everyone else has been saying.
All right, guys. Thank you both, Awesome Piano Man and Watchman King, for your questions. Make sure next time around you guys send in your questions and we will answer them before Battleground. That's the next pay-per-view, right? Yeah, Battleground. And we're going to move along with this current pay-per-view, Night of Champions predictions, coming up in the next part.